Hi, my name is Joe Cartwright. Welcome to my studio. My aim with these videos is to help you paint better watercolours. This next series is all about the basics. If you're a beginner or have found painting with watercolours challenging, then please join in, as these videos are for you. And remember, if you like what you see, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you'll be informed of each new video I produce. Hi, in this episode we're going to look at 4 different skies. These are not the only way to paint skies, but each is very useful for the beginner watercolour artist. After finishing each sky, I'll turn it into a simple landscape painting. So let's get going. All the skies in this episode are going to be painted on a small sheet that we call a 16th sheet. It's approximately 18.5 centimetres by 13.5 centimetres. When you're learning, it's a good idea to paint small. That way you don't have to struggle so much with the paint drying too fast. Also for this course, because I've limited us to just these 2 sizes, if we paint much bigger than this, it becomes quite difficult to paint big areas with smaller brushes. So the first painting we're going to do is one of fluffy clouds, and the sky is just going to be limited to one colour, so which in this case will be blue. My idea as a composition is to paint a big cloud here with a small cloud and then maybe a medium cloud here. Just 3 different size clouds positioned differently as well. So the first thing we'll do is we'll put some water on our palette, and I don't need a lot, so just one brush load should be enough, maybe 2 brush loads, and then we'll add some of our blue. So the blue is Winsor Blue red shade, and that's pretty strong. I might just add a little bit more water to it, and that'll do. Again, this isn't so much us trying to paint a painting as learning how to do clouds, or one way to do clouds and skies. Now the first thing I do is I pick up my paint, then I'm going to drag the brush through this lip on my palette to take out about half the water. And then I'm going to be starting on the tape, and my brush is going to be almost horizontal to the paper. The point is not going to touch the paper at all. It's just this bulb part here that will touch the paper, and I'll be moving it as I come down, and then just as I touch the paper I'll lift the brush up, and see how those few hairs are sticking to the paper, and they're what is going to give us this lovely broken edge for a cloud shape. There we go. And then I'll go back in, pick up some of this paint. So effectively what we've done here is we've painted what's called a negative shape. It's the shape between objects. So the objects are the clouds, and I've painted the shape between the clouds. I'll then dip my brush in water to dilute the paint, and I'm going to come and add a little bit more colour down here and here. There we go. Then I'll clean my brush very quickly, tap it a couple of times, and now I'm going to start, again, hardly any pressure on the brush, just a couple of fingers are enough. And see those hairs sticking to the paper? And they're sticking to the paper just through the surface tension of the water, the wet brush and the wet part of the paper. Then as I move it along, I touch the blue here and there, maybe a bit more, come back, there we go. So where I touch the blue, some of the blue, especially where it's maybe some of the paint's pooled, it flows in and gives some colour and form to the cloud. But I also make sure I leave areas that are untouched, and that's what gives us this bright broken edge in the sky. And then I'll clean the water, and I'll come back here and I'll just run that down to the ground. There we go. But that's the clouds in a blue sky. I'll go and dry that, and then we can just finish this off. Alright, so I've just dried that with a hairdryer, just letting it cool down a little bit. And all I'm going to do for this is put a little hill in the distance and maybe a little bit of green in the foreground. So I'll pick up some of this blue. I'm going to add a little bit of the permanent rose just to give it a slightly violet colour. And because the hill's quite a long way away, add some more water to it just to dilute it a bit. And I'm going to run maybe a hill from here. And a bigger hill there. Let's say something like that. Then we'll come in very quick. You have to paint this quickly, otherwise you'll get a very rough looking wash, which is what we call a muddy watercolour. And I can use that to sort of throw in a couple of undulations on the hill, just to make it a bit more interesting. Clean the brush, and then I'll pick up some of the yellow and I'll add some of this blue to it, and that'll give us a nice bright green. And we'll start with the hill in the distance. This way, you know, we can create like a zigzag entry into the painting. So as I come forward, I'm adding a bit more yellow and maybe just a little bit of the pink to give us more of a brown, dull brown colour. Again, it doesn't matter. I'm just making this up as I go along. Grab some more blue. A bit too much blue. There we go. That'll do. Sometimes if you want, you can, and if you want to retrieve some of the lightness, you can clean your brush out, squeeze all the moisture out, and I create like a blade shape here. And I can just lift some of that paint out, like that. Then we go and dry that, and I'll put in a couple of extra little things, and then we'll be finished. All right, this is pretty much finished now. All I'm going to do is mix some of the three colours together. Whenever you mix the three colours together, you create what's called a tertiary colour, and that's always a grey. So, and it can go anywhere from a black to a warm grey if it's got more red and yellow in it, to a cool grey if it has more blue in it. Here I've created a bit of a cool grey, and I'm going to use that to put in some wildlife into my scene. Maybe another couple up here. Like that. Maybe one more. There we go. And we could even throw in maybe some lampposts disappearing into the distance. Maybe just define this road a bit more. There you go. So that's just a little watercolour. So just to reiterate what I'm painting a sky like this, I don't draw the clouds in, I just visualize where I'm going to put them. I start painting from the tape into the painting. That way you give the impression of much more space that's outside of the painting. If you just paint a little cloud and you avoid touching the edge of the paper, you'll make your painting feel much smaller. Then when it was dry, then when I finished creating the pattern with the blue, and then I filled in the rest of the negative space, I came in with water to give the clouds some form. I hope you learned something from it. If you have any questions at all about any of these episodes, please leave a question in the comments below, because I do read them and I will answer your questions. So let's have a look at the next one. This next sky we're going to paint is a sunset. And typically in a sunset, you get the colours moving from cool to warm as you get closer to the horizon. I'll start by putting some water in my palette, just one brush load, maybe two for this, and some of our blue, which is our Winsor blue red shade again, and a little bit of the permanent rose just to turn that to a slight purple colour, and that will do for that. Then another brush load here, and we'll just put the pink, maybe an extra brush load of water. We'll put the permanent rose there, and then another brush load, maybe two brush loads. Start with the yellow, and we're going to add just a little bit of the pink, and that will give us a nice warm orange. I'm going to mix some extra of that because, there we go, that'll do. Great. When I'm painting these sunset scenes, I like to indicate where the light is coming from. So in my case, I want the light coming from the left. So what that means is you'll get, instead of horizontal lines here, you want a little bit of an angle to the gradation from the blues to the pinks to the orange. We're going to start with the blue, and again, a big mistake people make when they're first beginning is they just paint up to the edge, almost like they're scared to get paint on the tape, whereas you should be painting over the tape. If you just try to paint up the edge, you'll leave lots of little white patches around the edge, and then if you come to frame your painting, you're going to have to crop them out. So it's much better to paint straight over the tape. I'll pick up a fully loaded brush. Fully loaded brush is one where if you tip it like that, the paint will drip. And because we want to put the paint down and create that bead of paint and have it flow down the paper. Then very quickly, I'll pick up the next color, couple of brush strokes, clean it, and then go in with some purer paint just to there. Pick up a brush load of the orange, clean it, pick up some more cleaner orange, and you can see with each brush stroke how the paint flows down the paper. Okay, that'll do. Great. And while that's sitting there, I will go around and remove these beads of paint. When you're using tape, and later on when I'm in my more advanced videos, you'll see I very rarely tape the paper down. I tend to wet the back of the paper and hold it down that way, but I won't go into the reason for that now. If you are interested, have a look at one or two of my longer and more recent videos. But when you are using tape, you just have to be careful that you don't get water pooling underneath the tape itself, because what happens, it creates a little pool there, and then as this part starts to dry, it starts to suck some of that moisture out from under the tape, and you'll get cauliflowers along the edge. So cauliflowers are just where excess moisture flows into a semi-damp part of your painting. But this is a nice sky. We've gone from a cool blue or warm blue, because it's got some pink in it, to the pinks, to the oranges. All right. Now, and normally I would, if this was a bigger painting, I'd just leave it like that and let it dry naturally, but I'm going to go and dry this now. I've dried it, just giving it a moment to cool down, and all I'm going to do to turn this into a painting is add some sort of a cliff maybe here, and put a little building on that side. So let's and I've got these colours. I'll add some of them together, and that will start creating a grey colour, because as soon as you add the three primary colours together, the red, the blue and the yellow, you create a grey. Let me show you on a piece of paper. So that's the grey we've got. I want to make it a bit stronger in tone, which means making it thicker. So I'm going to add a bit more blue, a little bit more pink, and a tiny bit of the yellow. That'll do. So let's create some sort of hill there. Very quickly, quick brush strokes. Pick up my smaller brush, and let's put some sort of just an old Aussie farmhouse. Let's flatten the ground there a bit, make it a bit easier. There we go. Give it a bit of a chimney. Maybe a lamppost. And we'll throw in some birds. You can also throw in some fences. So this is just a made up scene. There we go. But that's your very typical sunset, and we've just turned it into a bit of a landscape just by putting a hill in and some sort of structure. And that finishes that one. The next sky is going to be a sunset again, only this time we're going to put some clouds in the sky as well. So we'll start by mixing the colours for the sky, which is again similar to the last painting of a sunset that we did. Some blue, a little bit of pink. If that's too bright, you can add just a tiny touch of yellow. That will just help dull it a little bit, because you don't tend to get a bright blue sky, but not too much yellow, or you could end up with something that's closer to a black. That'll do. I'm not going to need a lot of that. A little bit of red. And that will do us for that. And then some more with the yellow to give us an orange. Now you don't have to, you can just go from the blue to the red. It doesn't really make that much difference for this exercise because really it's the clouds that are going to be the important thing. And then just to speed things up a bit, I'm going to pick up some of that sky colour, add a bit more blue, a little bit of the red, the permanent rose, a little bit of the yellow. Now if you add too much yellow, it'll start looking a bit greenish on you, so you just add some of the pink, because that pink or the red is the complement of green, so if you mix the two together they cancel each other out. There we go. And we're going to use that for some of our clouds. Alright, so we'll start with the blue. Again, I'm going to very quick brush strokes, and you want to see that paint flowing down the paper. There we go. Back into the pink. Don't want too much blue. And then now to the orange. Clean the brush. Very quick. Maybe some brighter orange, bit of the yellow and pink. There we go, just very quickly, and we'll run that down to the ground. I'll take a second just to get rid of some of this excess moisture. So what you want to be aiming for, this is what you want to be aiming for, a nice smooth transition from one colour to the other, and that just comes from putting lots of paint down and letting it flow. Now I'm going to pick up some of this paint before this dries. You see how that just went soft very quickly? That says there's too much moisture in this puddle or in my brush, and also this area here is still quite wet, but mainly I had too much moisture in my brush, so I'm going to thicken this up, adding some blue and the pink. That's better. We'll take half the paint out. Add a little bit of the yellow to it just to grey it off. And I'm creating a bigger cloud here, leaving a little bit of space between them. Maybe a medium cloud. Clouds get smaller as they move into the distance. Let's extend that up there. Leaving little gaps so that you get some nice transitions. There we go. And then I might clean the brush, but then I'll dry it in the towel before I pick up more paint. So I want quite thick paint, and a little bit of this moisture here that's in my palette, this pink, just to, and I'm going to just drop some of that in at the bottom of the cloud here and there. Again, not too much. Maybe dilute it, but even though I diluted it, I then tapped it, my brush on the towel to take some of the excess moisture out. Here and there we'll add some of this red. There we go. And then we'll get a weaker mix of this darker colour, take out most of the paint, and we're going to just throw in some softer clouds in the distance, or lighter clouds in the distance. There we go. Now here you can see you've got a bit of a sharp edge happening. That's telling you this is is drying very fast. It's quite warm in this room at the moment. So let me dry that and then we'll finish this one off. Okay, I'm going to start, I've dried this, and I'm just going to use some of these darker colours to paint the hill and this building I'm putting in. You may want to use a different type of building, something that's more typical in your part of the world, or just, this is just a very simple farmhouse. And it's a bit dark underneath the awning. That'll do. There. And then we'll go into our bigger brush. And we'll use the rest of the paint just to finish this off. And I quite often leave little bits of untouched paper just to add some contrast. That could be anything. And there we go. Just the three primary colours together will give us a dark colour, a dark grey. When you mix the three primaries together, you can get anything from a black to a light grey colour, depending on how much of each you mix and also how much water is in your mixture. So the more water, the lighter the mixture is. So I'll just stick some posts here. There we go. And that's just a little evening scene. Up to now, the three skies we've painted, we've started on dry paper. And the reason for that is to create the broken edges of the clouds. You can only do that if the paper is dry. Now we're going to paint some wispy clouds, and they only have soft edges. So to make it easier for ourselves, we will be wetting the paper first. I normally don't wet the paper because if you wet the paper first, one, you can't get any sharp edges in the sky. And secondly, if you have mixed a colour and you're happy with that colour for the sky, but then you wet the paper, you're immediately going to dilute that colour. So you have to make allowances for that. But for something like this where you want soft, wispy clouds, wetting the paper is the way to go. I'll start by just putting in a brush load of water in my palette, mixing the blue that I would like to use. And I'm making it a little bit stronger than normal because I am going to wet this paper. So I'll squeeze the moisture out. Now the other thing, up until now, my easel has been set at about 15 degrees, but if I do that, when I paint the blue part of my sky, it will just want to run down. So to stop that, what I'll do is find something to prop the board up and really set it so that it's almost flat, right? It can have a small grade, but you don't need very much. In fact, I'll adjust it this way. There we go. Okay, so I've mixed the colour. First thing I'm going to wet the paper. And it's quite a sloshy mixture. And I'll give it a moment or two for that to soak in. I'll just go ahead and get rid of some of this moisture. on the edge. We're painting our clouds, which is our wispy clouds, by painting the shapes around them. So we pick up our blue, and you've got to remember that watercolour will flow, the paint will flow. So if you don't leave enough room for the paint to flow, you can end up losing any of your clouds. So what I'll do first is put a mark like that, and again maybe something like this, and you can see how it's starting to merge. So I have to keep that in mind. And then in the distance we'll make them just a little bit smaller. Maybe make this one a bit bigger. And that's pretty right. So even though this board is very much close to horizontal, it's still bleeding down a little bit. Now, you can control the direction of where the paint bleeds by tilting the board. So right now I'm going to tilt it this way, and this will get rid of a lot of that furriness and also give the clouds more of that wispy look. And then as soon as you're happy with that, dry any excess moisture off. I'm going to just bring this cloud down, the sky down a little bit further. There we go. And I'll go and dry that off. All right, so there's our finished sky, and you can see how I've managed to retain these white wispy passages, but also notice how, because I made sure that I used larger brush strokes and then smaller ones and varied their shape a little bit, it's given me quite a realistic looking sky. What you want to avoid is any repetition where all the sizes and shapes are exactly the same. So let's look at maybe putting in a rolling hill for this one. I'm going to get a bit of green, some of this blue, maybe a bit of pink. There we go. I think we'll add a bit more blue and pink to the hill itself. This is just out of my imagination, so it doesn't matter. There we go, that'll do for our hill in the distance. If you get a small brush, slightly thicker paint, we'll just use the side of the brush, take out most of the moisture, and we're going to paint some trees on the hill line. Vary the colour a little bit here and there. Vary the distance between them too, so that they're not, and their size. There. That'll do. just to create a grey, and we'll just throw something in the sky just to draw the attention to the sky. So obviously they're going to be birds. And when you're painting birds, you want to, and these are just a means to direct the eye into the painting. But the main thing is make sure that you vary the shape of the birds, vary their size and their position, and try to avoid putting them all in a straight line. Or evenly spaced. You don't want that either. That'll do. There you go. And there's a little landscape. But again, it was an exercise on how to do these wispy clouds. That's it for this episode. If you enjoyed doing the exercise, please subscribe if you haven't done so before. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to leave them in the comments section below. See you for the next episode, and happy painting.